Backyard chickens means fresh eggs and, if you're not careful, salmonella. My expert guest wants to keep you and your feathered friends safe. So today on Across the Fence, we're learning how to protect you and your flock. Hello, Vermont. The CDC recently announced a multi-state outbreak in salmonella cases linked to backyard poultry. But my guest today says that's not actually surprising. It happens almost every year. Why? Honestly, it might have everything to do with how cute baby chicks are. Think of them as fluffy little disease incubators. The good news, though, is that as hard as it is to resist the cuteness, it's equally easy to avoid an outbreak. My guest today is Dr. Andrea Etter, an assistant professor in the Nutrition and Food Sciences Department at UVM and the leader of the UVM Food Microbiology Laboratory. Since 2019, she's been the principal investigator of an ongoing study into the prevalence of salmonella in backyard chickens. Dr. Etter, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's lovely to have you here. And again, every time I have an NFS colleague or a former NFS colleague on the show, I always have to acknowledge that if I slip and I start calling her Andrea instead of Dr. Etter, it's because we have a friendship to build on. So it's really nice to have you here today.
Nice to be here.
All right, so let's start with salmonella outbreaks. Why should we be worried about salmonella? Like, how bad is it?
It's not pleasant. It's going to be worse than norovirus. It'll take longer to recover. Norovirus is just going to make your intestines unhappy for a couple of days, and then it's going to get better. But salmonella is actually going to kill off cells and remodel the surface of cells. So the lingering upset tummy and difficulty eating is going to take a lot longer to resolve. But more importantly, it's really a lot more serious for small children.
Okay.
So usually about 40% of the cases are in children under the age of 5, which is because of a combination of children love chicks, small fluffy things. Children have really poor hygiene. I have a 2-year-old. I can attest to this. And then their immune systems are still developing.
Yeah, so it's the perfect storm.
Yes.
You have these adorable, cute little baby chicks. You have children who are irresistibly drawn to them right at the moment where their immune systems are the most fragile.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think in this latest CDC outbreak, there's only been about, 34 cases, but 13 of those had hospitalizations. So yeah, so it's a don't mess around with it. It's not something that you want kind of a disease. Okay. And so are there other infections besides salmonella that are also, so what else is carried by chickens?
Campylobacter is another really common one, and Campylobacter is a bit less serious, but it can have some nasty ongoing issues. It can cause partial paralysis, temporary partial paralysis, but temporary means like 6 months.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Not really something you want to mess around with either.
No. These are both. These are large impacts on a person's life. We do not want any of these things. Also, are outbreaks confined just to chickens? I keep saying backyard chickens, but I don't think it is just chickens. It's poultry, right?
It's poultry in general. So turkeys, ducks, geese, quail. They're common in any of the poultry. It's just chickens are the most common thing people have. And
have you done, I think in your group, you have done some research into slight variations and differences, right? So what did you find out, like layers versus meat birds and things like that?
So layers usually have less salmonella than meat birds. Meat birds have more salmonella. Turkeys, particularly turkey chicks, tend to be pretty high on the prevalence of salmonella. Ducks and geese less so. I don't think we tested enough geese to really be sure. They're not that common. But yeah, so when you look at it, it's like meat birds and turkeys are the highest, and then layers, and then ducks are actually a bit lower.
Okay. And what is the most common way? I know this is all going to come back to the chick. What's the most common way that then flocks end up getting infected?
So typically younger birds are a higher risk. And this is because they're coming from a hatchery, and a lot of them are coming with salmonella. We did a project where we tested the shipping boxes at the agricultural supply stores, and we found salmonella in about 23% of the boxes overall. And of course, there were variations, more of the turkey boxes, fewer of the layers, more of the meat birds, fewer of the other species.
So it's coming from
Yeah.
the hatcheries, oftentimes. It's coming from chicks. Okay. Are there any differences from like where you're getting the chicks? Or, I mean, when your research, did you find higher incidence in certain
Yeah.
locations?
So different hatcheries have different incidents, but I wouldn't be comfortable naming particular hatcheries because these vary over time.
Yeah.
In fact, we even see like the type of salmonella changing over time sometimes. But we do see that the same salmonella we find in the chicks coming from the hatcheries will then show up in the adult flocks sometimes.
And it seems like it hits these hobbyist types
Yes.
of chicken farmers
Yes.
more.
So there's regulation for commercial birds and best practices and all that. That's a lot stricter than what's coming into the hobby poultry industry, which is basically unregulated. The CDC will look at the salmonella that we sequence and upload, and they will compare it to known cases. And they have actually reached out to the Vermont Department of Health, which did the sequencing for us, and asked for information on some of these. And I never give information on individual flock owners, but some of the hatcheries, there was one in particular that just was really bad over all 3 years of our testing. We ended in 2023. That was the last year we tested chicks. And so, yeah, I did let them know, like, hey, this particular hatchery, yes, they are not so good. I think it might be reasonable to
See, it's
reach
very,
out
it's
to
very
them.
good that we have someone like Dr. Etter who is keeping an eye on these things. I think you also said too that backyard chicken, you know, like when we have our own little flocks, that we tend to not do the sort of like the whole flock turns over at one
Yeah.
time. So we have a lot of haphazard introduction of birds of different ages, and that also can be a
Yes.
risk factor.
Yeah, so when we did some statistical analyses, when you have multi-age flocks or multi-species flocks, so older birds and younger birds, or meat birds, layers and layers, or turkeys and layers, even if they're not sharing a pen, it increases the risk, particularly if they're free range.
Yeah. Well, and this I thought was interesting because you got into,
Yeah.
I mean, you were always a science kid, but you grew up on a homestead
Yes.
in Wisconsin. And so you were interested in all of these different types of habits and, you know, I mean, like
Yes.
what homesteading life was like, and seeing what all of the different biosecurity risks were.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are plenty of pictures of me as a kid doing all the wrong things. I don't think I ever got salmonella, but
Yeah.
it wasn't for lack of trying.
Yeah, I mean, I think back to when we had chickens in California, and I am appalled at some of the things we did, and really glad that we didn't get super sick. So, and can you tell if any of your birds are infected just by looking at
No.
them? Yeah, you can.
No,
Okay.
even at the chick level where they're more likely to get sick, chicks that look perfectly healthy, nothing.
Yeah. And so,
or something, and
Yeah.
sometimes we'd have boxes with like a chick that died in transit, and that box would test negative
okay.
because we'd keep notes on that.
And how does the infection move from birds to people?
So salmonella primarily lives in the feces, so it's going to live in the intestines. Adult poultry lay eggs and poop out of the same hole.
Right.
So an egg, even if it doesn't have visible manure, could have salmonella on it. But from there, chickens are not the most hygienic creatures, so they dust
Especially not the baby
bathe.
chicks.
No,
Yeah.
they dust bathe, they step in their poop, the baby chicks step in their poop, and then they step in their water, and they step in their feed, and then things get
Tracks
dusty,
everywhere.
and there's fluff, and there's actually been studies in hatcheries where the fluff, you know, the feathers and dust has salmonella,
Yeah.
and that's probably the primary way it transfers across the hatchery.
So basically, they are little dirty birds.
Yes, they are very dirty. They're very cute.
Very cute, dirty birds. Okay, so let's talk about now avoiding an outbreak. What is the number one thing you can do?
Well, I mean, the number one thing you can do is practice careful hand hygiene. So if you're going to handle your birds or their equipment, wash your hands. And going along with that, if you are washing their equipment, the last place you want to wash it is the kitchen sink.
Yeah.
Because your kitchen sink has your dishes, and you're maybe washing veggies in it, and it's a really good way to end up with salmonella on your dishes or on your
Big
salad.
cross-contamination.
Yes. So ideally, you have an indoor-outdoor sink, like a utility sink. If you don't have that, and you don't have small kids, you're bathing in a bathtub. The bathtub is the next best. The bathroom sink is a little iffy because, you know, we clean things out. We drop toothpaste
Brush
in there.
our teeth,
and,
and then use your toothbrush to clean up the sink.
So it's a little bit risky.
Okay, so we're thinking about like those vectors of transmission, but then drains too are also just like bad places for the bacteria to grow and thrive.
Oh yeah, drains are great. If you think of a kitchen sink drain or bathroom sink drain, if you've ever had to like clean out a slow drain, you know that there's a slime layer in there.
Yeah.
And that's all bacteria and their layer of protective slime, and things can add into there and grow really well, and it's really hard to clean them out.
So, but regular things, Lysol, bleach, vinegar, it doesn't take industrial strength products to kill the bacteria, we just have to kill it.
Yes, and it's better to do it earlier rather than later, because once it joins the biofilm, then it's a lot harder to kill.
And are there any other like precautions a person should take to also prevent an outbreak?
So ideally you don't have your chicks, you know, chicks have to be in a warmer place. Ideally that's going to be a garage or a basement, not your main living area, particularly not your kitchen or your bedroom. If you have small children, something that you can control access to is going to be really important, so that if the kids are interacting with the chicks, you have an eye on them and you can wash hands, you can keep them from sticking that chick up next to their mouth or, God forbid, in their mouth.
No kissing the chickens. No kissing the chickens. Careful about shoes and things too, right? Okay, tracking them in and out. How important is it to make sure that like kids know about being safe around chicken and poultry? I think on your blog site we're going to put up a couple of you even have made some like materials for kids to work with to help on their hygiene. Yeah,
so I mean, kids really, really love small fluffy things, and I can't blame them. They're really cute.
They are so cute.
But kids they're not that careful, and obviously it's hard to explain to a toddler exactly. So that toddlers you just have to control. But a slightly older kid, it's a really good way to start building science into real life, as well as protecting them. So get them involved in farm stuff, get them involved in agriculture. Chickens are a great way to do that, but do it safely. And get them thinking about, okay, animals have germs and we want to protect ourselves from the germs while also enjoying the animals. And
so we're not giving up on our backyard chickens. We're not giving up on baby chicks. It's all just about partly using a little bit of common sense, and then also putting in some good routines in place and making sure the kids know what to do.
Okay. And so like these embryology projects are great, but also a great opportunity to start thinking about public health as well.
Absolutely. So Dr. Etter's lab has a website with educational resources like those coloring pages you can download and share with the little backyard farmers in your life. You can also learn more about her ongoing research and review best practices to keep you and your flock safe. The website is right there on your screen. Andrea Etter, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me,
It's been an absolute pleasure. And as always, thank you, Vermont, for learning and exploring with me today. And thanks to the team that makes Across the Fence possible. I'm Amy Finley. This is Across the Fence. Come back and let's learn and explore again tomorrow.